I'm Carol and welcome to Water-Wise Fall Vegetable Gardening. If you've seen any of my other videos, you'll know that I garden here in the low desert of Arizona. This obviously presents us with many challenges, including heat, too much sun, and of course, the watering issues. In this presentation, I'm going to talk to you about how to prepare your garden for fall planting, as well as show you some tips and tricks about how to be a water-wise gardener. Many people say to me, I have a black thumb. I kill everything. I say, there's no such thing as a black thumb. You just have a thumb with no knowledge. Hopefully, after watching this video, you'll turn your thumb a sort of greyish green colour, a bit like our desert plants. But you never know. Hopefully, you may even turn it green, eventually. Even if you are a completely novice gardener, this is the show for you. I like to keep things simple, and I always like to encourage everyone to just have a go. So let's start with the soil. This piece of ground's been covered with a blue tarp. Let's have a look at what's underneath it. As you can see, the ground is bone dry, cracked, and honestly, it looks all a bit daunting, doesn't it? I'm going to show you how to turn this into this. So what's a gardener to do? Even though we want to be water-wise, we do have to actually add water to start our vegetable gardens. So you might be wondering, why do you actually have to add the water? First of all, the soil is far too hard to dig, and you need to be able to have it moist so that you can add your amendments. The second thing is, the soil, once it starts to get moist, then you will start to get some of your natural microorganisms that keep the soil healthy and bring it back to life. We're going to fill this with water and we're going to let it sit, and then we're going to come back and have a look at it in a little while. So time to get a water break for Carol too. Let's have a look and see what it looks like. There you go, nice and moist now. After the soil's become thoroughly moistened, then we can add various soil amendments. This bed has been amended with manure. It's been spread over the top and it's been watered in. So let's dig down and see how it looks. You can see the original soil still underneath and how nice and loose it is now. I'm going to just dig it in and we're going to mix it up together and see it's starting to look a lot better already. Here we have a sweet potato vine that I've planted, and I've mulched it all around with pine needles. The pine needles are keeping the soil nice and moist, and even though this hasn't been watered for a good 3 or 4 days, you can see that the soil underneath is still quite moist. It also helps to keep the roots cool. So let's put the pine needles back, make the plant happy, and it'll grow here quite happily and is only getting watered every 2-3 days. So this is a good water saving tip, to use your pine needles as a mulch. So one of the things that we also ought to discuss is the actual soil that's in the valley here. We have clay soil, which is wonderful. It holds the water really well. But because of that, it also doesn't drain very well. So how can I explain that to you a little more clearly? If we were to take these golf balls and think that these are something like sand particles and put them in this jar here, you can see that between each sand particle, which is represented by the golf ball here, there's a lot of space. If we now then take this, which is actually couscous, Israeli couscous, and we cut this open, like so, and pour this into the same container, each one of these representing clay particles, you can see not only are they a lot smaller, but there's not a lot of space in between each particle, and thus clay doesn't drain very well, and we all know from going to the beach how quickly sand drains. So we've talked a little bit about the soil particles, the clay that we have here in the valley. That's one thing we have to struggle with. Another thing we have to struggle with is the pH of the soil. pH means whether something is acid, neutral or alkali. You may have learnt this in chemistry at school. Just a little recap. An acid is something like an orange, citric acid, or yogurt that you might have for your breakfast every morning. Alkali is something like the baking soda or this dish soap. So unfortunately the soil is more along this alkali thing, the alkali levels of pH. We also have alkali water, so we've kind of got two things going against us. So why is alkali bad for my plants? Alkali is bad for the plants because even though the soil has a lot of goodness inside, all the nutrients that the plant needs, because it's alkali, pH of alkali does not allow the plants to take up the nutrients that they need. So therefore we have to try and add amendments to improve that. So let's talk about some organic amendments that we can add to our desert vegetable gardens. This is purchased compost. I don't think this is particularly great stuff. It's very dry, it's got a lot of perlite in it, it doesn't hold the moisture very well. This is a purchased garden soil. There's many varieties out there. This one's got a lot of wood chips in it. There's another one here that's got a lot of wood chips in that might hold, it's darker in colour, might hold some more water. This is mushroom compost. It's absolutely gorgeous. I wish you could smell it. It smells fantastic. Really good to add to your garden. And finally, this is my own compost that I've made myself, which we're going to have a look at again in a minute. This is the last thing. These are coffee grounds. You know, you get them free from your local coffee shop. Fantastic for the garden, a good amendment. You can even put them on your house plants, full of nitrogen. And you know what? They're going to smell like mocha frappuccino or some other smell, but hey, that's okay. This is my own compost. I made it from kitchen scraps, garden scraps. It's recycling, it's great, doesn't go into a landfill. And we can use this compost to, just as an amendment, straight on the soil, dig it in, lay it over the top, whatever you want. If it was a bit rough and you wanted to sieve it, you can then use the fine sieved compost as starting your own garden seeds. There you can see what's left over there and all this wonderful fine compost. I wanted to share with you some tips and techniques for low desert vegetable gardening, which is especially important in the summer. You might be looking at this and thinking, Carol, this looks a dreadful mess. Why have you not pulled it out? Well, there is method in my madness. These dead and dying plants are actually keeping the soil cooler. They're keeping the moisture in. They're preventing the soil from blowing away. As they rot down, they're adding to the goodness and the biomass of the soil. And finally, you know, I can save the seeds, both for myself, as you can see here with this corn, for future use, and also it encourages all sorts of wildlife such as birds to come to the garden. So now you've got your soil all ready, it's all been amended, it's been well watered in. What are you going to do? What are you going to plant? Well, we're very lucky, even though we have this crazy Arizona climate, it does allow us to have 2 planting seasons. And they are divided into warm season crops and cool season crops. So a warm season crop is something like this pepper, which is a fruiting vegetable, you eat the fruit part. And then cool season crops are crops like this, where you're eating both the roots and or the leaves, such as broccoli, carrots, radish, Swiss chard, and so on. So now you've got your soil all ready for planting. You need to know when is the right time to plant. Timing is everything, as they say, and it's really important here in the low desert. So use the Maricopa County Master Gardener planting calendar to figure out when is the right and the wrong time to plant things. Here we're going to plant pepper I'm going to take it out of its little pot. I'm digging a hole that I've already amended with my wonderful compost over here. Remember we saw that earlier. Dig the hole, pop it out of its pot. Beautiful roots there, you can see. Pop it in, keeping it at the same surface level as the soil. Nestle it down there firmly with my fingers and pop the label in, and then all it needs now is a drink of water. So now I'm going to show you how to plant some seeds. We're going to rake the soil here, just like that, and then we're going to get the other side of the rake, just make a little furrow like that. Just a word of note, only plant what you like to eat and only plant what you have space for. Just because you can grow eggplant doesn't mean you have to. Here's the radish seeds that we're going to plant here. Just going to open the packet. And again, you don't have to sow the whole packet. You know, you're going to get too many seeds, too many plants all at once. So we're only going to sow about 1.5 foot of radish seeds, fold the packet over, leave the rest for another time in a few weeks' time. Just get my hand and gently cover over the seeds, making sure they're all well covered. And then the most important thing you can do is to keep the soil moist. A dry seed is a dead seed. It will not grow if it is not moist, and it may require you to even water it once or twice a day just to keep that soil moist before the germination can take place of the seed. Well, this plant here is a squash. You can see it's really struggling. It would have benefited for some shade, and even though it's got shade from the sunflower above it, you can see there's a bit there. It's not enough. We've had a brutal summer here this year, and this is a lesson learned. Gardening is not always easy. There's always another year to try something different. So now we're into fall planting. That means cool season crops, as I mentioned before. So again, what should you plant? First of all, only plant what you like to eat. Secondly, how much space do you have? And thirdly, how much produce do you need? Try to choose varieties that are recommended for the low desert, or try something unusual like a red lettuce, a golden beet, or even a purple carrot. The choice is yours. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the fruits of your labour. Soon you will be able to enjoy produce that is both local, organic, and fresh as can be. Happy gardening!